Welcome to Beyond the Show, the podcast home of all things Cannabis Conference. My name is Eric Sandy, and I'm the digital editor of the Cannabis Group at GIE Media. We announced our Cannabis Conference 2023 advisory board last week, and no doubt you saw some familiar names on that list. These are the folks who are helping us craft this year's educational programming across multiple days of panel discussions, research-backed presentations, and keynote addresses from luminaries in the biz. We've got a spotlight on each of those board members over at cannabisconference.com, so please check that out. In the meantime, I'm happy to share a recent interview with one such board member. On the show this week is Hope Wiseman, owner of Mary and Main Dispensary in Capitol Heights, Maryland. Born and raised in Prince George's County, Maryland, Hope has always been passionate about serving her community. In 2014, Hope graduated with an economics degree from Spelman College, and after spending a year at SunTrust as an equity institutional sales analyst, she decided to continue striving for excellence by pursuing her dreams of entrepreneurship. In the fall of 2017, Hope became the youngest Black woman dispensary owner in the U.S. with the opening of Mary and Main. In addition to her entrepreneurial pursuits, Hope is a speaker and consultant to individuals who are looking to enter the cannabis industry. She joined us at Cannabis Conference 2022, and we discussed that panel in this interview, along with much more. So please enjoy my conversation with Hope Wiseman. Hello, Hope, and welcome to the show this week. Very glad to have a chance to talk with you in these fairly early days of planning for Cannabis Conference 2023, and also, I suppose, the early days of the Maryland adult use market. It isn't even up and running yet, but it's certainly in the offing. So we can certainly talk about the conference in a moment, but I figured maybe starting with that Maryland news might be a good way of setting the stage here, of talking about Mary and Main and some of what's going on in the market. Back in November, our team, of course, was covering the elections, and not every state was as successful as Maryland. I'm curious, in the days that followed the election, what were some of the main, I suppose, reactions or ideas that you were thinking about following that vote?
Yeah. Well, first, Eric, thank you so much for having me, and to the entire Cannabis Conference team. I'm super excited. But yeah, to start with Maryland, after the election, we expected the ballot initiative to pass, but immediately I began to think about the legislation that will be created in the upcoming session, which is happening right now, that would govern our industry. So I felt like, the real work has just started, and I'm super excited to see how everything plays out. But Maryland has taken a pretty big stance on making sure to infuse social equity into the program from every aspect. So I am definitely positive on the program, and I think it's going to be an example for the rest of the states around the country as they also begin to legalize. And I think it'll be a talking point on the whiteboard for federal legalization as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one thing I wanted to get into. And I know that at least in this this bill that's being discussed currently to get the market up and running, social equity applicants, let me bring up my notes here, social equity applicants are being brought to the front of the line for each of these license types, at least the way the bill is presented as is. Here we are in mid-February. Could you maybe elaborate a bit on how the state has discussed social equity? I mean, the adult use market is coming up soon, but of course the medical market's been operational for a little while. How has Maryland been so far on that part of the industry?
Well, if you recall, the medical market was faulted for not having enough diversity. And Maryland, the population of Maryland is extremely diverse, with over 30% of the total population being Black. So, you'd want to see that reflected in license types. They don't want to get it wrong again. So, of course, with license types, yes, they're introducing priority licenses to social equity applicants. They're also introducing incentives for current licensees like myself, and other major operators and MSOs to partner with social equity licensees. There are also a bunch of funding programs involved. for potential licensees and applicants. And not to mention, they're looking at social equity, not just from making sure that those who have been disenfranchised or somehow affected by the war on drugs getting a place in the industry, but also to make sure that communities and families are reinvested in. So there's a community reinvestment fund, and also tax revenue has very specific designations on how it can be spent, all of which are tied to really arrest rates and other ways to show which communities in the state of Maryland have been most affected. So I think that Maryland is going about it the right way. And they're prioritizing not just social equity licenses, but also making sure that monies are directly going towards those community organizations that are already doing the work, and into the local municipalities that can invest into enriching communities that have been disenfranchised. So I'm excited to see that. Criminal justice reform is to follow in the state of Maryland too, because I think that's another huge piece of when we talk about social equity in cannabis. So yeah, I think Maryland's definitely leading the way.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say just between Maryland and I'm tempted to throw New York into the conversation as well. It seems like as we get into 2023 here that state legislators and regulators are finally picking up on the conversations that licensed operators and certainly consumers have been having for a number of years, and that some of these newer markets on the East Coast and in the Mid-Atlantic may be real leaders in the cannabis space. I know, California, Oregon, I mean, some of these older markets just have a sales volume, I suppose, but you're seeing a whole different kind of market emerge in your neck of the woods there. It's pretty exciting to see.
Totally. Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the one unique thing about Maryland is, at least with the bill, how it's currently proposed, it still has license caps. So it's not a, open market. However, it's a lottery system. You still have to qualify and be social equity. It's more, the ownership requirement is more than majority. It's at 65% to qualify as a social equity owned business. So I really do think that this could create a lot of minority small business owners. I don't think it's an environment that is, it doesn't breed well for large corporations. It restricts the number of licenses you can hold and the license types you can hold in conjunction with each other. So, it doesn't allow for companies to grow too large, but I think what it can do, as Maryland's industry is creating itself and just beginning, I think that what this does is it gives smaller businesses an opportunity to play in the market, especially as national legalization comes to the forefront in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, for you and your business in particular, I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but what are some of the maybe major changes or strategic issues that are on your mind as you're looking at adult use, in the future here? What are some of the main ways that you and your team may need to shift in terms of either mindset or actual business strategies?
Yeah, I mean, some of these are very obvious, right? So we're going to be experiencing an uptick in volume. We expect to see a lot more people coming through our doors. So we have to get even more efficient, even quicker, while still giving the same level of customer experience that people have grown to really love for Mary and Main. So we're working on perfecting that now. We have a few months before adult use would start if this bill was passed, which would be July 1st. So, we're really working on perfecting that, perfecting our lead times, and working on education. I think as far as mindset shifts, I think right now, our patients, a lot of them have been settled into the program and have been coming to us for the 5 years that we've been open. Where now we're going to get a lot of people, first-time cannabis users, off of the street, just saw the sign and are curious, maybe heard about something and have questions. So I feel like we're going to have more, just novice users, and we're going to have to go back to the early days of explaining what everything means, explaining the industry, the do's and the don'ts, just because it's legal. If you live in an apartment, you can still be fined or potentially even kicked out for your cannabis use. Don't drive and smoke, things like that. Just re-educating the consumer now from a different standpoint, and not every user is going to believe that they're using cannabis medicinally. Although, side note, I believe that every use is cannabis use or a medicinal use, but
I'm with you. Yeah.
but some people might not believe that. So there's definitely some education there that's needed. And I think there's a careful nuance in the adult use market on how you communicate education and how you market to customers to make sure that they are using cannabis safely. So yeah, that's how we're really preparing for the shift. I'd say business wise, we're gearing up to double up on inventory, to make some much needed upgrades to the store that we would be doing either way. It's been 5 years of business, but now, we're adding registers. We're looking at more ways to shop with us, like maybe a drive-through or walk-up counter or walk-up windows or things like that. So we just want to make sure that we're as accessible as possible and we're still being smart and running a lean business. That's something that we've always been very proud of, that we never overspent. I'm especially happy about that now while we're going through our issues in cannabis.
Certainly.
But yeah, we want to, as we grow to the new market, we want to keep our expenses as close to where they are right now, and just realize those gains from the increase in customer base.
Yeah, these themes are all reminding me of the last time we spoke, which was actually at Cannabis Conference 2022, and we were on a panel entitled "In the Black," and it was about being cash positive in the industry, and got into a lot of different retail strategies. That was in August. It's now February, 6 months later. I feel like from all the conversations I'm having that the price compression issue is really tightening, going back to the fourth quarter of last year and the start of this year, certainly. So maybe we don't need to go too far into the weeds here, but I'm curious how the downward price pressures are materializing in Maryland's market. Are you dealing with a lot of those downward pricing trends?
Totally. Maryland is not exempt from it. What I've seen is this trend typically happens in more mature markets. It happens much quicker in more open markets where there are a lot more licenses. In limited license states, it takes a little bit longer for it to happen, but it's almost inevitable. Price compression is going to happen when there's oversupply. And what happens in most mature markets are, they look at the growth of the industry in the first 2 or 3 years, and they think that it's going to continue to grow at that rate, which is usually high double digits or mid to high double digits. It's not going to continue to grow at 30 to 40% every year. There will be a leveling out. And I think that every cultivator and processor, what they look to do is kind of gain that market share as quickly as possible. So it works out for 1 or 2 companies, and then everyone else is screwed because there's just an oversupply of product at this point. And that's where price compression happens. So I think that it could be fixed by regulatory or regulations or legislation. But in reality, what's really going to happen is what happens in most industries. And what really probably should happen is eventually cannabis will be an open market. That will help a little bit, but really, the value is going to be placed in brands. And the plant itself, the flower itself, will be looked at more like a commodity. And then you'll have your small craft growers that grow really, really excellent cannabis that probably also are attached to a really great brand that people love. So I think that's kind of the evolution of our industry. But while we're still in this highly regulated environment, you're going to see each state have their own journey with price compression. And like I said, I believe it's inevitable the way that our industry is structured right now. So it's just something that you should prepare for, and people should start baking into their pro formas.
Yeah, my sense is you're spot on there with not only what's happening right now, but how things may shake out in the near term or even the long term. And some of these big high level issues are as you know, exactly what we're going to get into out at Cannabis Conference. Now, we're talking early in the year. The show is in August. A lot can happen in 6 months, I suppose, but we can sort of see where the wind is blowing to some degree over the next 6 months. So I'm curious, at Cannabis Conference coming up, you're on the advisory board, and we always appreciate your insights in helping us plan the show. What are some of the maybe high level topics that you'd be interested in discussing with industry stakeholders out at the show this year?
Yeah, I think this year we're kind of settling into some realities about our industry. So I think high level, I would love to kind of, listen in on ideas around price compression in mature markets, and just around pricing in general in mature markets and how to control it, keep your expenses down, and kind of like we said on the previous panel, stay in the black.
Mhm.
I definitely am interested in conversation around federal policy and kind of the predictions of where that goes. Last year and the years before, we saw a lot of pump fakes, and it made stocks or investor confidence go down a lot in our industry, when in reality, I think that everything that happened could have been predicted and it could have been baked into the stock. So I don't think that confidence should leave the cannabis industry. I think that people just have to get a little bit more realistic. And we were, playing with monopoly money and all these monopoly numbers before. And I think now people are just getting real. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about kind of federal policy and kind of federal regulation and how that can impact our industry. And then another topic, which is kind of related to federal policy, is interstate commerce. We see some states already coming out with bills around it. So I'm excited to kind of discuss the ideas of what that could look like and the impact that would have on the states that likely will embrace it, and how entrepreneurs can prepare for those opportunities. And then lastly, I'd love to talk more about research in the cannabis industry. We know President Biden has encouraged more research in our space, and I think that will really unlock a lot of doors when it comes to federal and state and local policy. So I'm really excited to see that. And I know that that will be really big towards, the movement of the industry forward and eradicating the stigma, not to mention getting more government money into the hands of those stakeholders that can make a difference in the space. So I'm excited to see more research and to discuss the types of research that we need in our space.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Very excited to get into some of those topics out at the show. One thing, or one question rather, that I like to end these interviews with, it tends to be something like, what are you hoping that attendees can walk away with and bring home back to their business? And once we have the schedule out there and we have these panels on paper, I probably will start bringing that question back into these interviews. But I wanted to end with you today, with the realization that getting out to Vegas and taking time away from work is, might not be the easiest thing in the world for a lot of operators. This is going to be a busy year, and by the summer, it's just going to be even busier. So I just wanted to get a sense from you, especially after last year, of what you see as kind of the upside of getting operators out of their facilities, wherever they are in the country or in the world, and bring them to Vegas. What are some of the maybe inherent values of those conversations that you just mentioned?
Totally. The value of community is really something in cannabis that we should not take for granted. It's very difficult to find people that understand the struggles that you've been through, even if you know other entrepreneurs. Oftentimes they can't understand the highly regulated environment that you are trying to survive in. Not to mention if you're a minority or a woman, the other systemic issues that you deal with on top of an already very difficult industry. So it's really amazing the environment that we curate at the conference. And this year we have a lot of really special roundtables that are really geared towards this type of community involvement and building. So I think that that's the main reason that I'd say sometimes it's good to pack up your desk, put down the computer, and get out in the field and talk to other people about what they have going on, what's worked for them and what hasn't worked for them, so you can avoid costly mistakes. And also just for morale. So, you're not alone. And there are other people who are ready and willing to help you. So yeah, I really love that about this conference, that it's not just, I think it's very friendly for cannabis hopefuls and, people who are interested in getting into the space, but there's also a huge space for people who are already here, and that are seeking that community, building and strategic partnership.
Well, I certainly agree there. I love to see the education unfold across those 3 days, and I've been a part of a number of these shows at this point. And this year, to your point, I think there's going to be a fair amount of catharsis and joy. I mean that's there every year, but this year, I think we're all going to be pretty excited to get out there 6 months from now. I can already feel it.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, between now and then, I'm excited to keep the conversation going with you and the rest of the board. Obviously, very excited to watch things unfold in Maryland between now and then. And, for now, Hope, I'm really glad we got to talk today, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yes. Thanks, Eric, again.
And that's a wrap on another episode of Beyond the Show. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Hope Wiseman. I know I did. It's great to get a chance to talk to business operators and the licensed medical industry in states that are about to flip over to adult use. I tend to find that transition pretty fascinating, and it's something that is kind of becoming more and more universal as states are coming online or legalizing adult use in one form or another. It's something that medical operators are increasingly having to reckon with or to strategize around. So it's something that we love talking about at Cannabis Conference as well, and no doubt we'll be getting into that this August out at Cannabis Conference 2023. We're going to be releasing the schedule of educational sessions in the near future, so keep an eye out for that. And it will certainly include some retail conversations as well, building off of this conversation that Hope and I had. In the meantime, though, check out cannabisconference.com. We're still offering the lowest rates of the year. So if you're thinking about going out there, and I know you are, we're going to see you out in Vegas anyway, why not lock in a nice, cheap rate between now and March 15th? Every 6 weeks, the rates will kind of increase. So be mindful of that and plan accordingly. You can learn more at cannabisconference.com, learn about the different passes that we're offering to the show this year. Check out more of the Cannabis Conference Advisory Board, including Hope, of course, as well as her fellow board members who are helping us craft that educational programming that you'll be enjoying in about 6 months from now. At cannabisconference.com, sign up for emails there, and every Friday at least, join me over here on the podcast. We're going to continue going beyond the show with fantastic folks from around the industry, shedding light on the issues that we'll be getting into at the actual show not too long from now, out in August, out in Vegas. So check out cannabisconference.com, and I'll see you here next week.